Hey guys, good evening. It is John C. Morley here, sir, entrepreneur. Welcome to Inspirations for Your Life. It is April 6th, 2024. Thank you so much for being here. Do check out my hat, Believe Me Achieve.com. Visit that for all my great insights and amazing creations. Whether you're here, friends, at 11:33 at night, 11:33 in the morning, or perhaps 6 a.m., 6 p.m., or maybe even 1 a.m. or 1 p.m., it doesn't matter. I'm very grateful that you're here with me to celebrate another great Master Topic week. All right, let's get right into the Master Topic because I know you guys are going to love this one. All right, here it is. You ready? The Master Topic for the week is our life is like I say the one for the week I should say is our life is like film. Series 3, show 15. And the granular topic for tonight is how, everybody ready for this? Let me put that back so you guys can see it. How film is developed, Series 3, Show 15, Episode 1. How many of you out there have heard of a camera before? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the camera. And so when we think about a camera, typical cameras before we had, let's say, digital, we had something called film. Something called film. But what is film, right? What is film? We'll get more into that. So how do you develop film? Well, film actually has 9 simple steps for developing. First thing you do is you're going to choose your developer. And so this is pretty easy. Unlike with color developing, you can use both C41 and E6, which is a color developer, and it works largely the same way. And there's a myriad of developers for black and white film as well, and it can be a little difficult for newbies to decipher which one will work best for you and your application. So there are both liquid and powder developers available, as well as solvents, fine grains, and non-solvents. And then there are minimum differences between liquid and powder. Decide on which developer you want to use, solvents, etc., such as an ID11, D76, Perceptitol, Micropin, Xtol. And when mixed at stock or a weak dilution, they provide a fine grain and are forgiving enough to cover a wide range of exposures on a single roll of film. Non-solvent developers such as Rodinol, HC110, FX1, and PMK, Pyro, will give an increased grain, will have an increased sharpness. Now, to make matters a little more challenging, most fine grain developers can be diluted at various strengths to increase sharpness. Although this often comes at a cost in the photo production, again, this is likely about people's personal taste. When you dilute, it provides more working solution for more film, but stocks can usually be reused up to 10 times with increased development time. So let me say this again. So diluting provides more working solution for more film, but stock can usually be reused up to 10 times with increased development time. So it's going to take a little more time with that, right? So depends on what you want to do. Now, the next thing you have to understand is there is a chemistry. So there are a few safety precautions that we always have to follow, and you need to make sure that you understand them. You want to wear rubber gloves at all times, and make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. If you feel faint or dizzy or not well, make sure to take a break or leave the room and get some fresh oxygen, like outside. Liquids used in the photographs are for the purposes, but you should always make sure to use rubber gloves when handling any potentially hazardous chemicals. Okay. Now, to start out, you're going to need to mix your chemistry. For power developers, you'll need to prepare the developer according to the instructions, like involving filling a beaker to a set level, like 800 milliliters, 600 milliliters before pouring in the developer parts, okay? You prepare the developer according to instructions, and you fill the beaker to the set level as required before pouring in developer parts A and B. And then you fill it up with water to the level of the solution you need. And if you're planning on using a dilute solution, you'll need to take that into account as well. If you're using powder, well, you'll need to wait for your working solution to come back to room temperature before you can actually do anything with it, which is about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It's very important that you follow. So for both liquid developers as well as most forms of fixers, you'll have to dilute your solution according to the instructions as specified. So next thing you need to do is load the film for development. So once your solution is prepared, you'll need to load your film onto the developing tank. So first, you'll need to place your reel in the center of the tank into the tank itself. And before putting the lid on the top, you have to ensure the agitator is locked in the developing tank. And this is so you can twist the agitator, therefore, by moving the reel with the film inside through the developer and fixer, while ensuring that all parts of the film consistently have access to fresh chemicals. So sounds like a pretty straightforward process, right? So the center of the developing tank holds the reel in place and connects to the agitator to allow it to agitate the chemistry throughout the film consistently and balance the chemicals. Otherwise, we could have some darks or we could have some light spots. Then you place the tank with the film on the center lid and the agitator that's provided. Film, scissors, and bottle opener inside the changing bag, and ensure that it's fully zipped up and closed. You place your arms inside the designated holes in the changing bag so that at least your arms up to your elbows are within and ensure that there are no space for light to seep in. And you want to be sure that the tank is light tight during the entire film developing process. The next steps, make sure you take the blind inside the closed changing bag so the film is continuously in complete darkness. And at no point until the film is wound on the reel and then placed into the tank firmly closed, can you open the changing bag. So you take the developing tank lid off and reel out before applying your bottle opener to the top or bottom of your film canister, and use it much the same way you open a glass bottle. You peel one side of either off before moving the spool from the canister and unfurling the film from the spool before cutting the film at the end attached to the spool, unless you want to accidentally cut it into your undeveloped pictures, which would not be a very smart idea. So there's a tricky part. Then you take one end of the film, usually the fat end without the leader, and you need to feed it into the film reel. For most colossal reels, you'll need to feed part of the film into the opening of the both reels parts together before winding them. And you may want to do some practice on this. This counts doubly when using 120 film, which, due to its larger size, is more prone to bending and friction, and it's also apparently more difficult to wind, which you will soon find out if you do that. Use the uncut film to practice loading the end onto your reel, winding and closing in the tank. Repeat the process several times until you feel very comfortable about how you're securing and your movements are going through, because that's a real important thing. And you can practice using the changing bags to load the film, just as you would with new rules of rolls. Muscle memory can be a huge asset when you can't see what you're doing. Once the film is wound, place your reel onto the center, firmly place the lid on the tank, and ensure the agitator is placed in the developing tank lid. You can now open the changing bag and remove the tank. Pre-wash or pre-soak your film, and then this is to basically prevent any air bubbles from forming on the film that can occur when the developer is added to dry film. Develop your film. After soaking, Pour the water out of the tank. If the water is a weird color or looks murky, don't worry, it's normal. And with the thermometer, test the temperature of your developer to ensure that it is at least 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius. If it's colder, you'll need to warm the solution. The best way to do this is to fill your sink with warm water, place the beaker within it, and wait for the solution to warm. If it's too warm, you'll need to cool the solution down, as the recommendation for every 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, the solution differs from the norm. Increase or decrease your developing time by 10%. For example, if you're developing at 19 degrees Celsius or 66.2 degrees Fahrenheit, you would add 10% to the overall developing temperature time of developing. And you will now then need to check the developing times for both your film and your developer, and either the technical information included with your developer, data sheets from the company producing the film, or that very complex, massive development chart, which you really need to be reading, which a lot of people don't. And so most developers will specify an agitation routine for developing. However, some developers, like Rodnall, are usually specified as being for stand development, and no agitation at all is required for that. So whatever timing you use, ensure that your agitation times are consistent so the film is constantly receiving fresh developer. Now that you've checked your developing times, your chemistry, temperature, and agitation routine, we pour the requisite amount of the developer, usually about 375 milliliters, into the tank and begin our timer. Pretty cool. Now, it's best to pour the developer slowly to prevent spillage. And when you poured all the developer in, lift the tank and tap it down firmly onto the hard surface a couple of times. Ensures that bubbles don't form and potentially ruin the development process. Then, number 6, you will add stop bath and fixer. If you're using a stop bath to stop the development, you'll now need to pour the required amount of stop bath solution for the recommended time into the tank before pouring it back into its container for reuse. You can run lukewarm water into the tank for 1 to 2 minutes. Following the development is sufficient to stop the development, and this removes the necessity of buying stop bath solution. There are a lot of people that have different opinions, but the 1 to 2 minutes of running the warm water is perfectly fine. Then we need to pour the required amount of fixer into the tank to remove the silver halide crystals from the film or the fix image. And the fixer is much less temperature and time sensitive than developer, and will prove usable at most temperatures, roughly 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, to 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So, for example, Rapid Fixer recommends a fixing time of 2 to 5 minutes, though it's not recommended to use it below 5, okay, just from experience. Then you'll do a final rinse. Now, what's left to do is the final wash by placing the developing tank underneath the tap. Rinse the tank for a couple of minutes before opening the lid and rinsing the film directly. After this is done, you can finally view the contents within. And everything is well, you should have a roll of perfectly exposed negatives. Now, the 2 most common problems for beginners are likely to encounter negatives being too thin or transparent, or often caused by underexposure or underdevelopment, or negatives being too dense or dark, often caused by overexposure. So let me repeat that again. So the one problem is the negatives being too thin or transparent, often caused by underexposure or underdevelopment, or negatives being too dense or dark, caused by overexposure. Okay, that is really, really important. Then what you do, you will unfurl your film. Make sure to grip it at both ends where there are no negatives. You don't want your fingerprints on them. And shake it to remove water droplets. The next thing you're going to do, you could rinse the negatives with a photo flow film cleaner if you want, but it's not necessary. Then you'll hang your film up to dry. You'll take your film clips and attach one to both ends of the film to ensure that they don't curl as it dries. For best drying, you can make sure that everything's done correctly. There'll be moist, dust-free room Could be a bathroom or inside of a shower while the air is reasonably humid. You can also hang your negatives one by one across the room. Usually it'll take somewhere between 2 and 5 hours for your negatives to dry, so please do be patient. Very important. Remember to dispose of the developing chemicals. Your current batch of chemicals will reach their shelf life and begin to get dark or smell different. So chemicals at the end of their life will not be as effective at developing your film. So best practice is to add a label with a mix date to your storage bottles, or keep a sheet with dates nearby where you store them so you know when it's time to get rid of them. All right. That's one way to do it, right? And so it takes time to do this. And then there are other things you can do with your negatives. Think of them as the raw files you obtain from your camera. You take your negatives to a photo lab or drugstore for scanning to a CD, and a lot of stores which don't develop black and white film themselves can scan it for you. You can scan your film yourself with a dedicated film scanner for scanning a 35 millimeter. There are lots of different scanners out there. You can enlarge your negatives optically in a dark room using an enlarger. And for this process, you'll need access to a dark room or a light, tight room at home, as well as photographic paper and photo paper developing materials from which to make prints from your negatives. So there is a lot to the process, right? The thing about it is that, developing is a process. And so this whole week I have picked this because I want to talk about how this relates to our life. We'll be talking more about developing film, discovering how the journey of developing film is going to mirror our personal growth. We'll be talking about that a little more in depth, exploring how negatives in our life aren't obstacles, but rather opportunities for growth and transformation. Positive, learn how to harness the power within to convert negatives into positives and turning challenges into stepping stones. And then we have embracing the analogy of film development to gain a new perspective on life's ups and downs. So today we kind of talked about film, and we talked about how you develop film. I think that was really cool. If you guys didn't know how that worked, it might seem interesting, but it's not something you're going to do if you've never done it before. You're going to need some practice. Okay. So it's interesting how it works. And the fact that you have to be in that light, tight environment so that light doesn't cause it to, ruin your film development process, because that would not be very good. It's possible to develop color negative and color positive films at home too, but there are a lot of added steps to consider. The C41 negative process itself is much more difficult due to being extremely temperature sensitive, especially without a basis in developing black and white. So you want to practice with black and white. That's where I learned. Color is a lot more involved, needs a little more room too, and you need more solutions. And the best means of success is to heat all chemistry used. And this is usually what we call the color developer, the bleach, and the fixer, as well as the developing tank and film in a sink or faucet until it reaches 38 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a little bit picky. And I think what we're going to learn this whole week is that our camera that we have, whether it's the digital camera, whether it's the one that's on film or it was a throwaway camera. And I have an interesting joke I'm going to share with you guys tomorrow, or I should say analogy about something that I learned from a friend of mine who was a teacher many years ago. And so I'm going to be sharing that story with you, which I think you guys will definitely get a chuckle out of. All right, guys. So we've got a lot to talk about this week when it comes to film and how your life can be molded very easily if we compare it to the film developing process. All right, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your night or morning, and I will catch you tomorrow with another episode, which will be episode 2, about our life is like film, and there'll be another basically granular topic for tomorrow that we'll be talking about. Have yourself a fantastic evening, and I'll catch you guys real soon, everyone. Okay? Take care, everyone. Bye for now, and I will see you real soon. Take care. Remember to like all my great content at believemeachieve.com. Like TikTok and all the great stuff. Scan the QR code, whatever you like to do.